in need of men who will be men today.
Hello, everybody. This is SP. Welcome to the Formula. You know Marquis. And our guest today is Andre Nelson. He is a healthcare analyst. He studies maternal mortality. And then we have Omari Maynard. I was introduced to these guys through a Zoom conference and with the Gentleman's Factory. If you don't know about the Gentleman's Factory, you really need to look it up. I'm going to put all their links in the description because I think for Black men, it's so empowering to have other Black men to support and lean on. And when I heard the stories, I just knew this was a conversation that needed to be had. But
welcome.
So how is everybody doing? How are you?
Well, doing well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, same here. Life is amazing. Life is beautiful. I'm happy to be here. And I'm happy to, have a chance to have this conversation with y'all.
Got some daddy action. Go ahead, family first, man.
I know, but now you're live, so say hi to the people.
See, now you're gonna be famous. Now you're gonna be famous. Michelle Obama next. You're the next to Michelle Obama.
She doesn't have socks though.
Yes, you can take off your shoes, baby. Yeah, right. Real life action.
You gotta love it, man.
Already.
It's welcome on this show. It's welcome.
Yeah, definitely. Opening up. I shouldn't even be opening this, but she catches
the
me.
the Pez, not the Pez, not the Pez.
That's candy.
I had the Garfield one. I had the Garfield one. I had the Pac-Man. Pez. I had all them, man. All the Pez. Come on, man.
Go do your thing, baby. All right. We're back.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to talk about about this topic because I don't believe that people really understand the dynamics of pregnancy, not only for women who are carrying the child, but also the importance of men in the whole process.
Yeah.
Definitely. So for me and Dre can, he is Mr. Analytics, so he can go into the numbers of things. But just to give you a short background of my story, my partner Shamani Gibson, she passed away in 2019, October 6th, 2019, due to a pulmonary embolism after giving birth to our second child. I'm so sorry, guys. My bell is ringing. I gotta go get that really quick.
Dude, you gotta do.
Right back.
Let me actually frame the conversation with you first, right? So, like SP mentioned, my name is Andre Nelson. I've been a healthcare analyst now since 2008 or 2009. Specifically studying maternal mortality over the last two and a half years. And I think, when you look at maternal mortality rates, I think, they're just way too high for such a modernized country like the US. But also a good portion of those deaths are Black women. So one fact, in 2020, 861 women died of maternal causes in the US compared to 754 in 2019. So as an analyst, when you trend this data, what you'll see is that year after year, it's increasing. And the overall number is increasing, but the percentage of Black women dying is increasing. So in 2020, the maternal mortality rate for Black women was 2.9 times that of white women. For Black women being such a smaller percentage of the total population, we are 3 times as high likely to die during pregnancy, which should be a time that we celebrate life. Between 2017 and 2019, 84% of pregnancy-related deaths were preventable. 84%. So we're talking about not only do we have deaths that shouldn't be occurring? The majority of those deaths are Black women, but the majority of those deaths are preventable. And yet, and still, not only is it happening, it's increasing. So I feel like at this point in time, it's whatever anybody can do, to stop this. We all need to be a part of this. No matter what you can do, whether it's host a podcast, create an app, hold space for the Gentleman's Factory to have these conversations. No matter what it is that you could do, so we have to be doing something. And we, as the Black community, have to we can't rely on anybody to do it for us. We're going to have to do it ourselves. And it's like, we have to do that now because it's not getting any better. So that's how I'll frame this where we are right now.
So like you said, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related issues.
Yeah.
But what are some of the factors that contribute to the disparities in the mortality rates?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest factors that contribute to that is bias. We'll call it implicit bias, right? What you have is a healthcare system that is built off of, really, for lack of a better term, just built off of racism. It was built off of the experimentation of Black bodies, slaves back in the day, and has evolved from that. And we were talking about it earlier, but one of the things that is still prevalent today is this notion that Black people don't feel pain the same way that white people do, or that Black people have thicker skin, or that we are fill in the blank. People hold these in their souls that this is the truth, including doctors, including some nurses, including people that work in the healthcare system. So that when a person of color, when a Black person says to a healthcare provider, I'm feeling pain, that provider might think, okay, well, that pain isn't as much as a white person feeling that same pain. We're not feeling it as much. And therefore it's not as important. Or maybe just take a Tylenol and take a nap. You'll be able to call me in 2 weeks.
Do you believe that persona is still thought of this day that, Black people, like you said, they have thicker skin or whatever? Do you believe that because we dominate in a lot of things, we have dominated, we built this country, we've done a lot of things, we've invented a lot of stuff? You think it's because we continuously dominate the culture and anything that we do and put our minds to? It could be, being the best doctor, it could be being the best scientist. Do you believe that a lot of people are still conditioned to say, okay, they are stronger than us, they are better than us? Maybe they don't feel any pain. We want to get rid of them. What's behind that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely think that people still hold that to be true because people see what we've been through as humans, especially in this country. Yeah. So I think that there's a level of stoicism that we have, but I think it was called the Human Genome Project in the 70s. White people did that, right? And they were they were dedicated on finding out that we were either less than human or had a different genetic makeup. They spent time on this, right? And at the end of it, what did they find out? That Black people are the same humans as white people, as Asian people. The whole race thing is ridiculous, but we're all human. So at the end of the day, we as people have been through a lot more than other races here in this country, but that's made us more stoic, right? At the end of the day, we're still human, though. So I think that you can look at the culture, look at hip hop culture, right? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of young people either dying, going to jail, getting tatted up. There's so much that comes with it that I think that a lot of white people would look at and be like, or other races look at and be like, yo, I couldn't do that. I couldn't get tattoos all over. I couldn't do jail bids. I couldn't do trauma through death and gun violence.
And shots, all that, and come back and do a whole album like 50. I'm just, 50
exactly.
Cent. You know what I mean? But yeah.
But I think that adds to that that kind of notion that we don't feel pain as much because we've gone through so much that how could any human go through what we've gone through? So I feel like that's definitely still perpetuated. I think it's to a certain extent still even being taught in med schools, to be honest. I asked a few Black doctors about their experience going through med school, and some of the things they told me, I was like, "Yeah, are you kidding me?" Like, it's still prevalent. Racism is just prevalent everywhere. You know, every institution here in this country has been built off of it. If it's financially doing well, was built off of slavery, and that had to be justified, though, and that's the point. It had to be justified by saying they are not human in order for us to experiment on them, because if not, that becomes a crime against humanity, right? Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
at the end of the day, you know, it's let's justify what we're doing by saying that they're not feeling certain things, and therefore we can. A lot of doctors made a lot of money, man. Back in the 1800s, like, they made a lot of money off of creating certain medical equipment based off of experimentation. You know, and I say that this is how I got into this space, to be honest. This maternal health space was learning through a book called Medical Apartheid, which I suggest, if you're able to stomach that book, I suggest everybody read it. There was an experiment on a slave woman. Her name was Anarcha. The doctor that was experimenting on her, his name was J. Marion Sims. He was a white man down in Alabama that decided to perform medical surgeries on her without anesthesia, on her reproductive organs. And he did over 30 surgeries on her with no anesthesia. And after reading that, it was like I could almost like hear her screams, you know, and they describe it in the book, what it was like for her. And that to me was like, it's insane. And to add insult to injury, I lived in Harlem for a little bit. They had a statue of this man in Harlem, in the Harlem entrance of Central Park.
Yeah.
And the inscription.
They celebrate their
what
non-victories.
What they celebrated. This is what they celebrated. And the inscription on the statue, it said, J. Marion Sims, for his contribution to medicine, he worked on, or he performed surgeries on slaves and queens alike. And what that meant was he performed these surgeries on Anarcha, made her go through all the pain to come up with an instrument called the vaginal speculum, which is used on women to this day. But that instrument at that time was used to help treat the Queen of England, who was going through some issues back in the day. Mm-hmm. So from the pain of Anarcha, he was able to create an instrument that he then took overseas and saved the Queen's life. And because of that, this instrument made him insanely rich, and the head of the American Medical Association, right? That's still a thing today. Was
and made women across the country still extremely pissed every year.
Of course.
And I have because I'm a nurse. This is not new to me to hear these stories. I'm also from the South. I'm from Texas, so I actually have an aunt who was sterilized going to get an appendectomy. Mm-hmm. She went to have her appendix removed, and they gave her a complete hysterectomy. Mm. So none of this is like shocking to me, because we had a history, and because people actually talk about the history, but the history that we're taught in school is basura.
It makes you think how many families have gone through things like that and have just this complete distrust to the healthcare system. It's like, I remember growing up, if a doctor prescribed anything for me, my mom would be like, nope, you're not taking that. For better, for worse, you know, there was a complete distrust from Tuskegee experiments to, you know, getting a hysterectomy or getting things removed, or Henrietta Lacks getting your cells used without your permission. It's like, there are so many things that have happened to us as a people through the healthcare system, that the distrust is like, it's there, you know, it's prevalent.
So we know that there are biases that that people just have in the healthcare system. Those are the things that are easy to identify. The harder ones are the unconscious biases. What are some of the ways you can kind of pick up those unconscious biases, because they're not in your face. They're the little things like you turn on your light and they come in and they turn it off and tell you I'll be back in a minute and they never come back.
Right. Personally for me, I feel like a lot of that boils down to a feeling, right? It boils down to what that interaction you just had with that nurse, or that interaction you just had with that doctor. How'd you walk away feeling from that? I tell people now, like, try to find a Black doctor if you can. Try to find Black healthcare professionals if you can, because at the very least, from the very start, at least you know that they understand something that the others won't, right? But some of these unconscious biases, I feel like, boils down to, like, how does that feel? Like, were you dismissed? Were they paying attention to you? Did you feel any microaggressions or passive aggressive feelings or words from them? It's hard when you're at a really vulnerable state, like being pregnant, and you just want to be healthy and have a healthy baby, and you go to a healthcare system that's near to you that you might be able to afford, or whatever the case is, and that might be your only option, or that might be the only thing you think is your only option.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it still has to feel right, because if it doesn't, then everything can go south.
Yeah.
And you always have the ability to make a move and not stay where you're at.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. To your point, like to Dre's point, it is a feeling and a knowing, and just understanding that going with the gut is super important. But at the same time, research, man, it's so important to do research, especially as a Black family. You have to. It's just different now. You have to do the research, and there's research that tells you, which hospitals provide, like, have the most C-sections, or percentages, or which hospitals have a lower percentage of C-sections, and it's not. There's nothing wrong with going to a hospital, or going to a healthcare facility and going and then switching, right? And finding the one that's right for you, finding the doctor that's right for you, finding the gynecologist that's right for you, finding the OB that's right for you. There's nothing wrong with switching until you find someone who you can relate to on a personal level, because they're going to be the ones that are essentially, taking care of your body, right? And making sure that you're going through a process that, can go south, but it can be beautiful if it's done right as well. And also, too, understanding that just because we're Black and we go to a Black nurse and doctor, that don't mean that, you found the one.
That's a fact.
Because there are a lot of Black people out here that, are like sheep's and wolves in sheep's clothing, and don't have your best interests, and really still have those microaggressions, or even those discriminatory stereotypes about their own people. It is natural. We live in a Western society where we are taught to fear each other, and that's just the fact. So understanding that is also important too. But another thing that you can do is, and Dre also alluded to it, is understanding there's birth options. You don't have to have a birth in a hospital just because your whole family did it, just because your mom or your parents did, and that's what there are options. You can have a home birth. You can have a birth at a birthing facility. You can have a water birth. You can have a water birth at a hospital. You can have, and also having that team, having a support team that's around you, making sure that you have, a midwife, a doula, a team of midwives, in order to make sure that when you're in when you've gone through your gestation process and now it's time to deliver, and you have to, and your focuses on pushing out this baby, that you have other people around you who can, excuse me, who can direct the nurses and doctors so that they understand what your birthing plan was or is, right? And so that they can advocate for your birthing plan. Because like Dre said, when you're in that situation, and I mean, as a father, being in a, we had a midwife and doula, but also being in the room when they're asking you like, yo, this is what we're doing, right? This is what's got to be done. It's got to be done right now because this is happening. And when you're in that situation, you don't know what to do. You are going to, you're going to look to that doctor and nurse as word because they are the professional, right? Even if they don't necessarily have your best interest in mind, and their interest is essentially pushing this labor along so that you can get this baby out in time so that we can get another body into this bed.
You have socks.
You have socks.
Oh.
You talking about socks? That is every time, like the second time. I'm like, you get that girl some socks, man. But real quick, so people like that are new to this, right? People that are new to this, I'm gonna act like I've never heard of this in my life, right? I'm the guy. Oh, hey, what's this? What's going on? My first time listening, right? Where are we getting this actual information? And because this is the World Wide Web, I can go on Google and get the wrong information, right? Where are Black people actually getting this information and it's correct? It's can I have a doctor and do the water birth like you're saying? Can I just be home and do the water birth? What's better? What's safer? What's where am I actually getting this information and it being solid in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, Google's your friend, shit. You could Google anything, and find that information. But I mean, understanding, and it's going to be different, of course, wherever you're at, depending on the region, depending on what you have available in your area. But Google, word of mouth. There's people who, and this is the thing too, like we don't share, and this is why, like, like it was so important for our family to share our story because there's so many stories like it. But even with great birthing stories, right, we don't share them enough. So asking family, asking friends, understanding again who's in the community, but again, Google, is a good place to start at least.
I would also say, I personally feel like doulas just know so much, and there are Black doula organizations across the country.
Mm-hmm.
I would start there, to be honest.
How do you find that information? Because I was asked that, but I told you in the green room I was sharing information because this is beautiful information, and I'm ready to share it, talk about it 200%. A woman went on my timeline on Facebook and she was asking, where do I find Black doulas? And I'm like, I'll find that information for you and get back to you. That's all I could say. Still, because at the time I didn't know.
Yeah. So again, depending on where you're at. So for me in Connecticut, there's the largest organization of Black doulas. It's called Earth's Natural Touch. It's the largest Black organization of doulas. Like for them, when you become a doula, you got to go through their class process, their schooling, if you will, and that takes about a year. And they become very proficient in the whole birthing process. So that's one here. I know there's one in New York. There's a few in New York. You really just got to Google like Black or African American doulas, and you'll get a list. You'll get a list. Find your region and reach out, and they're more than happy to connect you. There is Omari, the Earth app.
Yeah, Earth app. I'm sure you can definitely find information on it. The Earth app is essentially an app where you can go and share your birthing story, and you can rate how was your doctor experience, how was your nurse experience at a hospital that you were at. But other organizations here in New York.
Hold on. That's Earth, IRTH.
Yes, IRTH.
You'll get ratings, almost like a Yelp for your birthing experience. You'll get ratings on this hospital, this doctor. Once you see that rating, maybe you decide not to go because it's too low. That's one. Another app is called Health and Her Hue. Health and Her Hue is an app that connects people to healthcare professionals of color. So it will connect women, pregnant women, I believe, with No, I think just women in general, Black women or women of color with professionals of color.
I think people don't even think about it that prior to the 80s, births were at home, and the mortality rate was way different than it is. 83% of births are done in the hospital, and the mortality rate is higher than it was even when they were just having babies in the field, and then going back to work.
Yep.
The next day or something. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So people, I always tell people, because I am a nurse, the hospital is no place to get well.
Mm-hmm.
That is why the hospital is even trying to get you out of there in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
For the profit.
That's ill.
For the turnover.
It's not even for the profit or the money.
No?
It has the highest rate of nosocomial diseases. So MRSA, RSVP, all of this stuff is in the hospital. And so they're trying to get you out of there as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Because the hospital is not where you want to get well. Your outcome is much better when you're at home, which is why they're pushing home health now, where they treat you, but they'll even send you home with IVs. They'll send you home with respirators, just because it is a safer environment and most likely cleaner.
Cleaner? I was supposed to be clean. I'm just saying, like, what are you saying? Oh.
But think about like double rooms, right? So if you're in a room next to a patient, sometimes there's triple rooms, right? You might be in a room with 2 other patients that are coughing their lungs out, and you're there for a broken arm or something, right? It's like, do you really want to be sitting next to somebody that's coughing all day, all night? And you know what I'm saying? It's things like that where you're not trying to call people dirty, but the environment itself is housing every sick person in that region.
And if you have 15, 20 patients that you're taking care of, how many times have you been in the hospital and watched them wash their hands when they come in and when they leave? Mm-hmm. Or remove their gloves every time they use them? If I take you to the bathroom, if I'm not washing my hands after I put you back in the bed before I give you your meal,
right?
How clean is that? Mm-hmm. It's those little things that makes it so easy to pass disease. So in knowing that, because we have been trained now to go to the hospital because of the profit margin, how do we now break that cycle where people understand that home births are not shouldn't be as scary as they made it seem, because they were pushing one outcome, and now they see that outcome is not working.
Yeah. I'm glad you even brought that up, because that's what, that's really what we're really pushing now. Like, in terms of what we saw or what we created for the Aftershock film, and then what our foundation is really pushing is getting back to what created life, right? And what we've been doing for centuries, essentially. Having births in hospitals is about 100 years old at the most, right? So before that, we had midwives, doulas, and we were giving births at home. We were birthing, And if you look at the statistics, it was safer for my great grandmother and my grandmother to deliver a child than it is for, my partner, or my hopefully it won't hopefully those statistics will change once my daughter has her children, but honestly it might not. So it's so important that we really do get back to understanding what our roots are as Black people and what our culture has provided us, and really sharing that information. Midwifery and doulaship it was a birthright. It was something that
Mhm.
your grandmother taught you, or your aunts. It was the village taught you how to bring earth onto this planet. And that's what we really need to get back to, because when we're talking about the hospital and the business of hospitals, if we look at hospitals are where you get operations at, right? And essentially that's what they have turned birthing into. That's why so many Black women specifically have C-sections. And if you really look at the number, like if you really think about it, right, and you look at just the people who are in your circle, who have had children in their 20s and in their late teens, even their early 30s, right? And the amount of them who have had C-sections, when at a point where your body is of its most strongest, right? Its most physical, has its most capable physical abilities to have a vaginal birth, and still having C-sections, right? Their first births being C-sections, second births, and then the doctor's telling you, because you've had a C-section the first time, you can't have a vaginal birth the second time, which is absolutely not true.
Right.
So it is, essentially a point where we really have to start looking for more information and understanding, just the same way they've demonized, marijuana and plant-based medicine and things of that nature, because of the fact that, they've.
Oh, he froze. They fear losing money and, of course, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just going off what he was talking about, I had a question about C-sections. So basically, why are they, I think he was about to answer it anyway, but why are they pushing more C-sections than natural birth and gravity births, man? Like, you know what I mean? He's back on. He's back.
Yeah, I'm back. My bad, fellas.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Ladies. So why are they pushing it? This is the why they're pushing it, because for a vaginal birth, I think it's about $15,000 or something around
Between
there.
5 and 15. Yeah.
Yeah, that they will get, and it's honestly C-sections, and it takes about 8 to 12 hours, depending on the amount of labor time, right? And a C-section, you get twice the pay. It's about almost $30,000 to do a C-section, and at the same end, it's about a 45-minute process. So when we're
Mhm.
talking about those type of numbers, right? I mean, the incentivization of having a C-section is obvious, right? If I can do, and if I could plan it out, I could get people in and out and keep getting that check. And then this is the thing that happens is, once you have a C-section, more than likely, they'll throw your child also into the NICU. And if they're in the NICU, then that's another $45,000 a day,
Another check.
for a child to be there. And so they call NICU children, or children who are in NICU, they call them $1 million babies, because if you're in there for 10 days, I mean, that's so we're talking about, this is the system, right? This is the system in which we live in. This is what the Western world has been made out of. We create systems on the backs of Black and brown people in order to build up this nation. So
When we talk about failing hospitals, when we talk about
Mhm.
hospitals in the hood, hospitals
Mhm.
that are not getting a lot of financing, public hospitals, this is a revenue stream,
The gold
unfortunately.
mine for him.
Hey,
Mhm.
as a woman who had a kid, I really had to fight to have a natural birth and not have a C-section. And they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And I was like, no, I don't want any. I don't want a C-section. I do not want you to shoot nothing in my back. Just leave me alone. It'll come when it comes.
Yeah.
And just leave me alone, because I people think C-section is, oh, that's easy and you don't have to have any pain, but a C-section is surgery.
major surgery.
Mhm.
It's
Major surgery.
major surgery. It's unnecessary in most instances. It's an unnecessary major surgery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And people don't look at it like that.
Yeah. It's framed that way. And imagine you have to fight and get attitude for saying you don't want a C-section, you want to have a birth naturally. Like that's where we've come to as a society where people are coming in like, no, I don't want that. I don't want medicine. I don't want, and then the doctor's looking at you like, what's wrong with you? Like, nah, I don't think that's a good idea. You should be XYZ. It's like, yo, when did we lose the power? When did women lose the power to over what they want to do with their bodies and how they? I mean, I guess that's an even larger conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't go to the
I mean,
abortion.
I literally argued with them about an epidural. You are not shooting anything in my back. Just leave me alone. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I literally had to have a major blowout with the nurses and the doctor
Mhm.
and the anesthesiologist, because that's who normally comes in to do the epidural. Because I'm like, no, I don't want that.
And I think that leads, that's perfect segue to some of the things that we're trying to fight right now and trying to push in empowering partners. Because for so long, I feel like as men, we've been like, all right, I'll follow your lead. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. I'll show up when I need to show up, blah, blah, blah. But now we have to become advocates. Like we got to be in that fight. Like, no, you're not gonna do that to her. Like, y'all already have enough to deal with for the pregnancy, right? The anxiety, the emotions that come with that are completely heightened. You shouldn't have to be fighting at the hospital with anybody, right? And so this is where we come in. This is where these conversations become important because we have to be educated just as much as our partners are throughout the pregnancy process.
Definitely.
In order to understand for every trimester is a new challenge, right? Or could be. And we as men, as partners, not just men, but partners, have to understand what's happening at each phase so that when we walk up in the hospital, like, nah, that's not going to happen today. That's not going to happen. Let's talk about that, right?
So what can black men do? I'm sorry, SB, I know you was about to say this. What can black men do to actually, strengthen their relationships and support, their women during these times?
And not only what can they do, but how do you empower them to do it? Because I think that's important too, to make them comfortable in the space where they feel the power to do it.
Yeah.
Omari, you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. I could start, definitely. So, I mean, it is like anything else. You have to educate yourself, right? Like when we think about birthing, we all know how to make a baby. Like that's easy, right? We can do that, and as men, we talk about it. Like Dre said, we don't necessarily. There is no blueprint to what you do as a man when you are, having your child, right? That's kind of, I even want to say it's taboo because there's just not even a conversation that we have as men. So, but the first thing to do is pick up a book, right? And educate and do your own research, right? Do your due diligence, understand what a gynecologist is, understand what, a OB is, understand that, what happens during each trimester, like, and that's research. And if and it's so important to empower yourself to do that so that when you do go into these hospitals and you do go, into these visits and you're talking from a point of reference, from a place of reference. So now this conversation is totally different once a doctor understands that, this brother's done his work and he knows at least a little something. So now I can't just give him, everything's fine, or not even acknowledge him at all. Right. So that's one. But also too is to then also ask questions, right? And we don't talk enough, we don't share enough what our own birthing stories are, right? We all have a birthing story, right? We all have a mother who has birthed us, so that's an important reference, right? Talk to your mother about your birthing story, or your aunts or your sister or whoever is in your family that you can pick their brain about, because all this information, all these downloads, they will only get to help you in your journey through, you're bringing new life into this world. And then, Drake can talk about what we've been doing as a collective in order to have some concrete information for people for men specifically to go.
Yeah. So, like Omari was saying, the information becomes empowering. At the end of the day, how we see it, and this is what we're talking about on the Gentleman's Factory, is that once you become pregnant as a couple, you as the man or as a partner have to become almost like a Secret Service agent. You got to
like
look at yourself like you are now head of security,
yeah,
and your primary focus is your pregnant partner, right?
Mhm.
And what that means is not just like I'm gonna just look out for her, make sure nobody's messing with her, but it means I have to understand what my partner's medical history is. I need to know if like her parents had heart attacks or suffer from hypertension or diabetes or anything that like major ailments. I gotta understand what she's been through and write it down. Put it in your phone
Write it down.
with the app.
Write it down.
get a notebook, write it down, journal everything. I get it. Yeah.
Exactly. So you want to understand all of the things that she's gone through medically in her past, so that if anything ever does happen throughout the process, somebody asks you a question, you could be like, yeah, she takes this medicine, she's this blood type, she had major surgery here, she might be prone to cancer traits. Like you can spit them off, right? Head of security is who you are now. You're no longer partner, you're head of security. So once you understand your partner, the next thing is to track anything that happens throughout the process.
Okay.
Right. So headaches could be a signal for preeclampsia, right? Over a certain amount of time, or swelling could be a signal for pulmonary embolism, right? Certain things could be signals for much larger issues. And this is where the tracking becomes important, right? So once you understand your partner's history, their medical history, throughout the process, you want to track anything that seems out of the ordinary, because your job now is going to be to escalate everything. I don't give a fuck what it is. Like, if you see a problem, your goal is to make sure your partner is coming out on the other end okay. And I'd rather a doctor tell you, or whoever, doula, midwife, be like, all right, I see that this is a thing, but it's really not a thing.
Yeah.
And then you could go back to being normal, right? But at the end of the day, tracking everything becomes important, right? So you have your medical information, now you're tracking any type of pains or things out of the ordinary. And like Omari said before, understanding what's supposed to be happening by trimester is important, because things are going to change, right, over time. I think if you have at least those basic understandings, you come in armored, ready to fight for your partner, ready to advocate and provide information for your partner if she's unable to do so. And you also know what time it is. You also know what's supposed to be happening and when, for the most part.
Because most men don't feel like fathers. I'm sorry to cut you off, Amari. Most men don't feel like fathers. And this is the honest truth until the baby's born and you see the actual baby.
Facts.
And I'm speaking for myself, at least, and then people I know in my circle, right?
Facts.
They don't feel like you said, they're not writing down stuff. They're not the head of security. They're not doing this, right? They're not like, they're there, but not there. You know what I mean? They're not, journalizing this stuff. But most men feel like fathers once the child is born and they can actually physically see their child. How do you reverse those conditions and have them journalize things and write notebooks and
thank you for
it's just each his own. You just gotta love your woman that much to.
No, definitely. So I mean, yes, right. So your point, like, some couples may not necessarily be that close. Some may just be like, I smashed and that was it, and but we're really speaking to even them, but also to men who understand, like, this is my partner, this is what we're doing together. But to your point, right, like, and this is what me and Dre are really working on, and this is why it's going to be so dope, is because even the process of bringing a journal and writing, and that might not be your thing, right? Honestly, it just may not be where your head's at. But what we're doing is we're working on creating an app that does these things for you, right? So it is an app in which you can track your partner's progress. It's an app that will give you healthy reminders about what should be happening during each trimester, what you should be said. Tell your partner she's beautiful today. rub her feet today, make some tea. These are also, now we're talking about shifting our brain, shifting our mindset, because again, like I said, these are not necessarily things that we've seen as men, growing up. So they're not necessarily things that we're going to do in our manhood stages. But if there is something that we can download, is there something that we can shift this mindset of understanding that we are head of security, right? Then I was talking about shifting the culture, right? So with this app as well, it'll be connected to whatever doctor or nurse that you have on board as well, so that when you're inputting, every day, like let's say for 3 days that she's had shortness of breath, and they also get that in real time. And then now we can start having a conversation between patient and physician, in which now they can now be empowered themselves to act and react faster. And then so with this app, again, like I said, it shifts the culture. It gives the men a thing to do during the process, and it provides information, right? So now you don't have to necessarily say what is an OB. All that information is on, right? We'll have basic knowledge information, understanding what a midwife does, understanding what a doula does, so now you are empowered as a future father, in order to make sure that your partner is doing and doing well and supported in her her time of need.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift, right? It's a paradigm shift in thought, because for so long it's just been that, like, once the baby comes, I'm on. But because of our data, because of what's happening, we have to change. Like, we got to be more active before they come, because they might not come. That's the reality.
And honestly, like, my story's on the far side of the spectrum, right? Nobody should expect their partner to not be here after they give birth, but honestly, it is a reality, right? It's a reality that I live, and a reality that many men live. But when we talk about maternal mortality is one thing, but when we talk about maternal morbidity and the traumas behind near-death experiences, now we're talking about 10 times, instead of the 3 to 4 times, and this is more of a common occurrence, right? So these are the things that we're really, really making sure that this is the exact reason why we're creating this app, to make sure that this maternal morbidity piece decreases. Because women, when we talk about major surgery, things go left, right? And if we can really reduce those happenstances and allow, like I said, empower men to be able to be engaged. Now we're talking about familiar units. Now we're talking about community units, and you can push one person, you can push 2 people, but you can't push 100 people, and champion the same thing, right? So, we're really creating, instead of we're really creating this, right? And then that's how we're going to shift this.
And I think we also have to kind of keep in mind that even though it may have been one of those hit it and quit it moments in your life, this is still important for you, because we have to change this. I'm just a dad after the baby's born, because if something happens to the mom, you are instant. You're instant dad.
And we talk about maternal mortality and women passing away, but infant mortality is just as
high,
right? It's just as high in Black and brown individuals, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. You provide that support regardless, because of the fact that this is your child. And again, we're talking about the extremes, but the extremes happen to our people, so we want to make sure that baby and mother stays here earthside.
I also wanted to talk about this only because I watched a woman tell her story about having a stillbirth moment, and now that they have these new laws, she couldn't get the care that she needed and became septic.
Mm.
So when we talk about I think there also needs to be a higher conversation that men understand about the abortion issues that aren't just I'm getting rid of a kid. It's more nuanced than that. And a lot of times things are her this particular lady, her husband was completely against the DNC process because it is considered abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about educating, I think we need to also think about educating if things do go wrong.
You are speaking a word right now. And I think personally, one of the things that I went through, I think the first time we got pregnant, my wife miscarried. And I that wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind prior to that. I didn't even, and you would think, like, I work in healthcare, studying maternal health, that that wasn't even a thought. And when it happened, I remember being devastated, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nobody I turned to talk to about it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think that we as men, as partners, have been so separated from this whole maternal health process that we step into it and then we're just like, all right, what's happening? And then we become reactive to whatever happens, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. We become reactive. And I think that we need to now enter a space where we're much more prepared, as prepared as we can be, I guess, informationally or just having conversations to understand about miscarriages and where to go once that happens, and how to heal from that, or stillbirths. You know, that's another thing. We were talking about this, what, yesterday, Omari, or 2 days ago. Like, it affects us way more than I think that we as men really think about, you know, or feel. Like, we don't talk about these things. The barbershop conversations are usually about sports and hip hop, right? Like, we're not talking about, you know, the times that we felt vulnerable and needed support. So I feel like with the information, the conversations need to start changing to embrace all that comes with this, because there's a lot that can happen. So the abortion, the stillbirths, the miscarriages, like all that, like, we all go through it at some point. Like, we need to just, I think, just create more spaces to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And there are professionals who are, you know, who are available and, you know, who understand the nuances of these conversations. But, you know, it is something that, you know, you would need to seek out as individually, you know, as an individual. You just like everything else, right? You got to find your tribe, man. You got to find your tribe. You got to find the people who will support the things that you do, and get that support, and give that support as well. You know, so, you know, it's not like, you know, there aren't men that are out here that aren't that are not that are there aren't men that are speaking about, you know, stillbirths, or, you know, maternal mortality, maternal morbidity, or therapists or grief counselors, and, you know, men's groups and youth development groups. Like, they're out there, you know, they're definitely out there, and they're in our community, you know. But it's something that, you know, you need to seek out. But once you do it, and, you know, you tap in, it'll change your life, man.
As women,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to support men in this journey? Because quite often you're just focused on, can I pull my pants up and zip them up today?
Oh Lord.
Facts. Yeah.
Oh man.
But I think there has to be a level of support from women also. So as men, how can we contribute to making men more comfortable in that space.
Mhm.
Good question.
I mean, I said it earlier. You know, sharing your story is so powerful. It's so powerful. Like I was talking to my godmother about 2 months ago, and she watched the Aftershock film, and then we just kind of started talking. And she told me she got into conversation about how she almost like she suffered from, can't remember the name of the term, but for the first two children, like she wasn't contracting. She just like the babies would essentially just kind of fall out and she'd like almost bleed
Mhm.
out, and very scary. And then she had to get a blood transfusion. The blood transfusion reacted negatively. She ended up breaking out. It was just a wild story. But the point was that this story would never happened if the film didn't come out and she didn't know that, this is what I'm specifically talking about, right? And because of that story, like it, hold on one second, baby. Because of that story, it allowed me to understand her better and to know how important it was to make sure that this doesn't happen to my child, right? And but if we're not sharing these stories, then us as men, we're just oblivious, right? So that, I think that's really where, really where we start at. And once we know that, this happened to my mom, so this could happen to my daughter, or this happened to my aunt, so this could happen to my niece, like then it changes the game, right? Then we're a little bit more,
Sneaking
we're
up
a
on.
lot more, and I'll say it a little bit more, but we're a lot more invested in what happens.
Yeah.
If we know, like, yo, I might not have been here, because my mom struggled to get me here. Like, it hits different,
Yeah.
So I think once you understand that, then we can start branching out and knowing that, my brother Andre went through the same thing. So let me check up on him, like, and vice versa. And then that snowball starts to happen.
You guys like really give me a lot of strength. Like I said, when she talked about this subject, she brought the subject up to me. I deep dived, did my research, and I was just like I was telling Andre before you joined the conversation that I'm laughing, I'm crying, I'm doing a lot of things, man, researching this stuff, and I'm just like, you guys, what do you guys? And I know this, the question might sound insane, but you guys have been going through some of this stuff. Like everybody heals different. Is there different healing practices? Anything that you can share to, like, if anybody else is going through this right now, that not just like where to go in the groups, but is there anything you guys can share, like some healing practices that may help these people that's going through it right now, like right as we speak?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I mean, everybody's going to be different, right, to a certain extent. But I think what it boils down to is, from my perspective, is tapping into self and not running away from those feelings. And what I hate most about us as men, especially Black men, is like we want to term our more feminine qualities of crying or of feeling sad or of feeling in general as it being gay or it being this or that, and then we want to be the complete opposite to make sure everybody knows that we're hard or we're tough or we're
Hardcore, yeah.
right. So I feel like the more that we don't acknowledge those feelings, the less we'll be able to actually heal from that. Right. And so you got to tap in. And the way that I tap in, the way that I feel like is best for everybody to tap in is moments of silence, is like meditation. Right. And this is separate and apart from any type of religious kind of practice. It's, can I sit with myself for 5 minutes and let my thoughts just be, and let my feelings just be, and then understand that it's okay. So I would start there, just check in with self-care becomes so important.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to drown this. You're not going to drink this pain away. You're not going to roll up, smoke this pain away. You're not going to fuck this pain away.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually it's going to come back to, can you sit with yourself and just deal with that, with what you're feeling, and then try to seek help, try to do something that might help you heal. And that can come in terms of therapy, or, exercise, meditation. For me, martial arts was big in helping me get through this, because the anger that I felt, I was able to take it out in a way that I wasn't actually hurting somebody, but I got that anger, that vibration, that energy that comes with anger, that comes with rage. I was able to not only get it out but control it through martial arts. So that for me was like my path, right? When I look at Omari, art is more so his path,
Oh, I
right?
love your
His
art, man.
paintings
I gotta
and
buy some. I gotta buy some.
Beautiful. Appreciate it.
For that.
right.
Yeah.
So it becomes like, what is your thing? Because we all have our own thing.
Yeah.
You just gotta find
Yeah,
it.
man. I'll be totally honest with y'all. You know, after Shamani passed away, I was in my darkest places, man. And like, to Dre's point, like, it was that thing where I didn't know what to do. I like my brain was scrambled. It was fried, to be totally honest. And so I'm trying to, just do everything that I thought that I needed, like trying to link up with tricks, trying to see if I could fuck the pain away. And honestly, my body, it couldn't even do it. Like because I was so, my spirit, my soul, my physical was so attached to my partner that like it wouldn't let me even go through that, right? Or even try to do it. But that's all I knew as a man, like, oh, this is what I got to do, right? I got to do something. So it really came to a point where I had to sit down, like, and sit in it and understand what happened and really kind of figure out what my new life would be, right? So it was essentially a rebirth, and then it got me into a space where, with conversation and, eventually, looking in, like it turned into this mind, body, spirit training, right? So every day I was working out, every day I was running, every day I was doing my calisthenics, every day I was reading. I probably read like 15 books in like a year, and I didn't have sex for about a year. And then I was also painting, like Dre said, I was painting. And for me, painting, it allowed, like, again, to move my energy, but also to understand, like, when I'm feeling low, it gave me something tangible to see, and I could see what the progression was, right? So it gave me a lot of hope. And then in all of these different ways of transferring energy, as well as communicating, and then us starting to meet as men, and just having really candid conversations about what we're going through as individuals and how we're trying to navigate this world, right? These are the things that really allowed me to step back and understand that it's essentially, I'm planting seeds, right? A part of me had died. It died, right? And then now it was time for me to rebuild and become anew and plant these seeds, and then cultivate them. And those seeds were essentially this mind, body, spirit training. And and I'm a totally different person because of the loss that I've suffered, but I definitely allowed that loss to push and project me into a different being, right? Because it allowed me to essentially, change my life, change my way of thinking. Because if I didn't, it would be destructive, right? And that's what we don't, right? We, like Dre said, I'm not smoking your pain away. Drinking that's only going to get more problems, man. And for us specifically, men who've suffered maternal loss, we have little babies, children that we have to raise at the same time of going through our grief, right? So, it wasn't an option. But for some men, unfortunately, it is, because they're not really allowing themselves to be in that dark space, because nobody wants to be there, but you have to be there. I think it's just, as individuals, you have to be there. You have to understand how to navigate these dark spaces, because we all go through our own traumas, regardless of what they are. Mine's were, going through, losing my partner. Dre's was, suffering miscarriages. And I'm sure there's other things that, who we probably haven't even got a chance to talk about. And I know that you two have your own life stories, but we all have to take those times where you strip down naked and understand that, it's for a reason, it's for a purpose, and it's for a greater purpose. So, if you don't take advantage of that, then, it's only self-destructive.
How do we, because this has been something that's been weighing on my heart, because I always hear men talk about emotions as a feminine quality.
Mm-hmm.
How do we cultivate a level of emotional intimacy for men
Mm-hmm.
where they are comfortable having these conversations with each other about on an emotional level? Because women are very good at having emotional intimacy with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We are very good about laying it out.
Mm-hmm.
But men see that as a feminine quality when it's just a human, it's a human quality. You have to have a level of emotional intimacy or you feel isolated, and then where does that energy go? So as a community, what ways can we cultivate that where men are more comfortable expressing their feelings without thinking that they soft or all of that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I think we have to really evaluate where we are as a culture, because at the same time that I want to be like, well, here's something that women can do that can help, you also got to look at the culture in that a lot of the things that we do as men is to get women, is to be able to say, I got this, I'm doing most of the things we do, how we dress, how we talk, how we walk, all that is to get women, right? And when you think about it, not many women, more in like a primitive sense, not many women, I think in men's minds, are attracted to men that might be talking about their emotions more than they're talking about more masculine qualities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the conundrum that I think a lot of men find themselves in. It's like, I do want to open up emotionally, but I'm not sure if I do that, I might look like a sucker to this woman, right? And then I'm sure, SP, that you know some women that are like, this nigga is soft, even if they, like, it's a conundrum.
100%. I'm agreeing with you. Yeah, keep going.
You hear what I'm saying, all right?
Yeah, man. Speak on it, brother.
I think it goes. I think it goes. It kind of goes both ways, because now we have been trained to not ask
Mm-hmm.
and not accept. So that's the dichotomy that we have to change. That because even we are built to not show emotion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we'll show it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
As women, we'll show to other women our emotions.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, for men, it's about permission. If I think that's where it starts, right? So if I'm out here in these streets talking about, what I've been through and how emotional it was for me, it gives permission for another man to do the same, right? That's one thing. And then also too, just understanding, like, really, like, just from a very simplistic level, right? I was birthed from a woman, and my dad provided the seed, right? So I have qualities of both. Like, obviously everybody does, right? So if I'm on, it's like working out. If I'm only doing freaking bench presses, right? If I'm only bench pressing and getting my chest strong, and then I'm skipping leg day every day, I'm gonna look crazy, right? And it's the same thing, right? So if I'm not,
you're gonna fall over.
exactly, right? So if I'm not stretching myself from my masculine qualities as well as my feminine qualities, then I'm not a holistic person. I'm not as much of a man as I can be, right? And that's when it really kind of boils down to it. And I think that if we're not having that kind of logic and that understanding of just from a simplistic level who we are as, like you said, as human beings, then it only begets top heavy and scrawny legs, right? But I'm trying to be out here, fly and build all over, right?
Let's strong, bro. Let's strong.
And let's really think about it, like, like I think of a dude like Prince, right? Prince is the super most feminine dude you could see, but he was getting all the joints.
Oh, all the
All
booty.
of them,
Yeah.
every
Getting all the
last
booty. And
one of
showing his
them.
booty. Showing his booty, getting all the booty. Yeah,
Exactly.
that was going
So
on.
if he could do it, sure, I could do it too. Right? But it's like, but to that point, you know, he was getting that because of the fact that he was so, and this is really what it really comes down to. He was so secure with who he was as an individual, right? And I could be, I could do all the lifting all I want, right? But if I'm not a secure individual and that doesn't exude without me even saying anything, then it's not a conversation, right? But if we're again, so like Dre was saying, if we are going inward, right, and really learning how to be who we working on ourselves on a daily basis, like it's gonna be get all the things that we need, right? So I could be as feminine as I want to, but if I know I'm a man, then trust me, all the women will know that I'm a man, and they're gonna be get down and lay down, right? Because I'm gonna get them all, right? That's what it is, right?
Prince
So
Part 2 up there, you know what I'm saying? This dude.
nah, but yeah, man, like we got, and that's really what it comes down to. Like we really gotta start thinking about ways we can become our best selves.
And it's leading by example. I think that giving permission thing is really the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Leading by example, having these conversations with other men, like yo, and not being afraid to, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Saying it, I felt this way, and that's how I felt. And what,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how about you? How'd you feel? You know, so
So if you had, so you, if if you have a final word to leave with people to make this journey easier, what is that for the audience today? What do you want them to take away the most from this conversation?
Well, don't limit it to a word. It could be a
No,
conversation.
I'm just saying, what do you want them to take away from this conversation?
Gotcha. You want to go, Dre?
yeah. I think from my perspective, you know, I'm a thinker, an analyst. At the end of the day, information is key. You know, it's you have choices out there. Understand what your choices are. Understand what doulas and midwives are around you. Talk, have conversations with people. This process, this pregnancy process, should be a beautiful experience for both you and your partner, and it can be. You just have to do your research and understand what your options are because you have options, and don't ever feel like you're locked into one thing, right? So I would just say, do your research, be informed. That information empowers you, and walk in that empowerment. You know that this is you are responsible for this, and do whatever you can do to make sure that it's a great process. You know, and that's for the woman and for or the birthing person and for their partner. You both should be heavily involved in this process, and that the days of that's her problem or she's gonna do this and I'll just tag along. Those days are over now. You know, it's Black women to Black culture is like
Not a camera person.
getting to humans. You know, so we got to save our people and we got to be the ones to do it.
Love it.
Yeah,
Omari.
definitely. I was gonna say community. It's so important that we just talked about this. Like, we work on creating our best selves so that we can, be the best for our children, be the best for our partners, and then essentially be the best for our community and then our society, right? So, it is, but when we in this Western world, we've just been taught, that, we are individuals, right? And we work in silos and you don't ask for anything and you don't talk to the next person because they're going to take whatever you have. And, but just from an African, if we're talking about African centered, thinking, it is all about, collective. It's all about the collective. It's all about the tribe. It's all about how you can add value to the people around you, because then that's when you become your most strongest self, right? So I think that, for me, that is it. So if we're talking about, having bringing women, bringing babies into our world, and supporting our women, it is that, right? It is being your best self, but then also understanding that you don't have to know everything, but if you do not know anything, you can ask for that support from your tribe and the people who want to see you and your family prosper, right? And you have to do that, and we have to do that, so we have to make sure that we're putting ourselves out there, so that people understand and know what our needs are, so that they can support, and then so that we can, again, you know reciprocate, help somebody else. um I'll leave it at that.
Can we speak more on your foundation in the app? Because I know the app, you guys are I'm very excited about this app. But the
Yeah.
foundation, of course, and then the app, um, those are key things that we want to like spread. You know what I'm saying? So we can get that information out there.
Yeah, definitely. So my foundation is called the ARIA Foundation. It stands for the Advancement of Reproductive Innovation through Artistry and Healing. And what we do as a organization is that we bring art and different modalities of art in order to have conversations about maternal health, maternal mortality, in order to let people understand and know who Shamani Gibson was and is, and continue her legacy, and work to, fight this healthcare epidemic, maternal health epidemic, excuse me. But we use different modalities of art, such as painting, creating movement, psychodrama, and conversation. Anything that is artistic is falls under our umbrella. Um, our website is the ariafoundation.org. My Instagram is m_u_z. My foundation's Instagram is the Aria Foundation. So you can find us. We're out here, and we're doing a lot. We can go into what we do as a foundation, but it would probably need another 20, 30, 40 minutes.
I love it, love it, love it.
Follow us, follow us, and then check our website out.
And I'll put the links in the description.
Awesome.
Andre, you took this mantle and you ran with it. What can we as a community do to support you in the work that you are doing, and making sure that this gets out?
Yeah, just I think continuing to have these conversations in different ways is just the most important thing, because it's not just maternal mortality, right? It's maternal mortality, it's infant mortality, it's stillbirths, it's maternal morbidity, which is huge. It's all the things that boils down to us reproducing ourselves and growing, right? Because right now the system of America wants us to shrink. And so unless we keep talking about it, then the numbers are going to keep increasing, and we're going to end up in bad spots. So conversations like this, I mean, you walked away from the Gentleman's Factory conversation with something that touched your spirit and your soul, and you said, let me follow up and have another conversation about it. And that brought my brother here into the conversation, which is now going to bring more conversations about. And that's what the goal is at the end of the day. We're in the process of creating an app. We're going to call the app Seneca, named after Seneca Village, which was a part of Central Park. So before Central Park became Central Park, there was an area in that area where I guess former enslaved Africans came and created their own space. And in this space, they supported each other. It ended up growing to more than just Africans, but we were there before Central Park was there, and we had our own houses, and we had our own little village, and this village supported each other. And that's what our kind of mentality is with this app. It's track your partner, track what's going on, keep all the notes, know what's going on, but also know that there is a tribe of folks that you'll be able to link up on the app with, that will support you that we can find you support if we need that support. And that's what all this is about at the end of the day. It's about the support. So, you know, as we continue with this app and as it grows, we might need, you know, some help here or there. I might reach out to SP like, look, I might need some help with this. You know, do you know anybody that might help? And there's no shame in my game for this because there's a bigger cause here. So, you know, at the end of the day, just knowing that you guys are here to support us and that we're here if you ever want to have us back or have a larger conversation,
all day.
That's all it's about.
Before we go, I really just want, first, I want you to just explain to people the difference between mortality and morbidity, because I think that's going to be a question. What is he talking about? What's the difference?
Yeah.
Try the app. No, I'm just kidding.
No. So when I talk about maternal mortality, what I'm talking about is the death due to either the childbirthing process or during pregnancy or up to a year postpartum. So if a woman passes away after she becomes pregnant throughout this process up to a year after giving birth, that's looked at as maternal mortality. That had something to do with the pregnancy process. When I talk about morbidity, we're talking about usually major injuries that have occurred because of the process, through the process. So getting sepsis, bleeding out. A lot of women have hemorrhaging is a big one. You can go through some major issues, especially with C-sections, and still live. But what happens is your quality of life changes from that point on. And you have to track that because we're talking about financial implications now. You know, insurance companies have to pay out for some of these things, and you know, your life may change. You might not be able to do the same things that you were doing prior to becoming pregnant. So that's I guess the easiest way to explain it, but that's the difference. Morbidity, you're still alive, but your quality of life has changed.
I want to thank both of you so much for coming on the formula. For me, hip hop has been the only culture that I have identified with from the time I was 6 years old. So it means more to me than music. For me, hip hop is mind, body, and spirit. Without all of it, it's something that you pass down from generation to generation. And I hope that with this show, we can pass down the knowledge that not only are dads important, but they are an essential part of the process, especially with pregnancy. This has been over almost a year in the making, and I've been so excited, and I am so happy that both of you could come today. You moved me in a way that I can't even explain. And so I just want to actually just give you my heartfelt thanks that you are doing the work that you're doing, because it is so necessary.
I appreciate that.
And I'm gonna be honest, I'm a man. I'm one of those mans, right? But I'm telling you, man, when I started doing my research, I'm telling you, man, I'm emotional. I'm crying. I'll tell you, I cried. You know, so I cry in movies. I don't, you know, Titanic, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I cry. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, man, meeting you guys, you know, is making me stronger. You know, I'm glad that I had this opportunity to not just research you, to actually talk to you and become verbal friendships, you know, as is, and then you'll hopefully in the future we can, you know, work together and do something else. Maybe come back. You said come back on a podcast, man.
For sure.
Your strength and your ability, your knowledge, your information is just making me a better person, a better man, and making me more vulnerable to tell my story and stuff like that. Because I'm working on writing books myself, so it's probably gonna
Awesome.
open me up more. You know what I mean? To
Definitely.
like spill my blood on those pages, man, and hopefully I can help others as well.
For
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
There's strength in vulnerability, bro. So
Yeah.
all that you said is just like we talked about before. That just makes you a more complete human.
Mhm.
You know. So I thank you both. I thank you both for having us on and listening and asking questions and really opening up your platform to the things that we had to say. Super important for our culture, super important for hip hop culture. This is a part of it. This is a part of it. So I thank you both, and I thank Omari. Like, retelling stories, reliving this shit is not the easiest thing in the world to do, but
Yeah.
he does it constantly to try to help us as people. And what I do, I do because he does what he does. And my wife often calls us the head and the heart, and so I bring the information, he brings the soul, and we're going at this together. So
Dope. I love that.
yeah,
man. I appreciate y'all too, man. Thank you so much, man, for having us on. And again, it is so important that we have these type of conversations in these type of settings, because when it all comes down to it, it is, and I appreciate this more and more every day. It is a blessing to be able to work with and convene with the people that support you and people that you want to be supported by. So we really, that definitely should never go unsaid, because we way too often deal and work with people who we really don't want to fuck with, and
Yeah.
that's a fact, so having these type of spaces is so important, and also too, man, I would be remiss if I do not tell everybody to go to Hulu and watch AFTERSHOCK.
please, please, please,
It
please.
is so important for us as a culture to be able to understand, what we're facing, and how we can support each other. And the film is a beautiful piece of art, man. It's a good film.
Have your tissues ready, but know that after that you will walk away stronger.
That's
right?
a fact.
Have your tissues ready, though. I'm not gonna lie.
I already got it, man. I got it right here.
All right, Marquis, you got anything you want to promote?
Besides, this wonderful podcast and yourself, man, SP's been a great addition to my life. And she's introducing me to people like yourselves, and she's making me a stronger person. And I appreciate you, SP.
Thank you. Like, follow, subscribe, comment. Let's have a conversation. These are conversations that need to be had. Keep it respectful, but it's a conversation we need to have as a community. Thank you again for coming on. Don't forget to catch the THHC podcast. We do album. He does Marquis does album breakdown.
Your emotional. We break down on my podcast that she joined. I joined this one. We break down actual hip hop albums with artists if we can.
Okay.
And say Nas came on the show. Hopefully he will, but we'll break down Illmatic or something, and song by song, and we'll talk about his process and what he, what happened with that song. What's up with this track? When this guy came on, what happened? The producer did this one, what happened? So we get we get that actual thorough conversation of the artist, of the breaking, and then we ask questions, and it's just conversation.
Dope.
Sometimes we don't get the artist, we just break down the music and we have fun.
Yeah. And don't forget, hip hop is more than just music.
Yep.
We stronger together. So peace. We out.
All right, y'all.
Boston. Gotta stay down there.